The most important One Piece card ever printed is finally here, and the game may never be the same again. What is up? It's your boy Real_Joshua, and yes, that might sound like an exaggeration. I mean, if you're a One Piece card game player, you've probably already thought of 10 counter examples to what I've just said. Cards that are more powerful, cards that are more rare, cards that changed the metagame more. But if you're not a One Piece card game player, which is to say you're part of the overwhelming majority of human beings on this planet, and if you know anything about the card in the thumbnail, you would probably agree at the very least that it is the most recognizable One Piece card ever printed. But I'm not here to argue that it's the most recognizable card. I'm here to argue that it is the most important card ever printed. Before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe if you have not already, but let's get right into it. Just to recap, on July 3rd, the Los Angeles Dodgers held One Piece Night, an official collab with Toei Animation, where they gave out free straw hats. They had a brass band playing the hits from One Piece. The first pitch was thrown by Emily Rudd, who plays Nami in the official live action Netflix show. People were cosplaying. They made a special animation specifically for the game, which they played during the game. They had a One Piece themed drone show after the game, and most importantly, they gave out a free One Piece card game card with art drawn by Eiichiro Oda himself. Now, I say most importantly because I was at this game, and I gotta tell you, the card basically stole the show. Yes, while the cosplays were amazing and the sense of community was awesome, you could not get through this game without hearing about the card or having other people come to you about the card at some point in the game. People were lining up from 1 p.m. The game started at 7 just to get their hands on the card. I got there 2 hours before the game started and I barely got one myself. It's hard to know how many were given out, but they gave away 40,000 hats apparently, and I can only assume that the amount of cards that they gave out was quite a bit less than that. But yeah, you would walk into the game and people were immediately coming up to you asking if they could buy the card off of you or if they could have the card. My cousin walked into the game and he happened to get a card, and he was immediately confronted by someone who offered him $300 on the spot to buy the card off of him. People were flying in from out of town. There was a bunch of One Piece card game players there. A few of them recognized me, which was a huge trip. But yeah, the card was heavily in demand and is still being talked about all these days later. Why is that? Well, for a few reasons. If you think about it, this card was essentially the perfect storm of collector's items. For One Piece players, it was an awesome alt art of green purple Luffy, which is one of the stronger decks in the game right now. The fact that it was being given away for free at a Dodger game made it even more enticing. Besides that, we have the fact that this was also an amazing piece of sports memorabilia. This was a collaborative card with a Dodger hat on it. One Piece is a huge and growing franchise, and the Dodgers have a massive fan base in Japan thanks to players like Otani, Yamamoto, and Sasaki. And then you have One Piece fans who love the show and came to the game to see this collab with the Dodgers, and they get this amazing card that commemorates the show that they really love as a collab with one of their favorite teams. When you take all of that into consideration, it's clear that there is a lot of overlapping demand, not just within the One Piece community, but outside of it as well. Enough for people to pay upwards of $300 to $600 for the card. How much is it actually worth is hard to say. We don't know exactly how many copies were printed, but I have the feeling this is going to remain an expensive card, especially if it doesn't get a reprint. Which, if the recent Borussia Dortmund card is anything to go off of, it probably will not be getting a reprint, and this will remain a highly in-demand collector's item for the rest of its lifespan. Now, all this hype means that the card is obviously sought after, it's obviously expensive, it's obviously much talked about, but that does not make it important. Let's talk about why this card is so important. I have always believed that the One Piece card game has the potential to become one of the biggest card games out there. And over the course of its lifetime, it has grown massively to the point where, by many estimations, it is now one of the top 5 card games in the US. Now, it is very difficult to break the top 3 of Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Magic the Gathering in the States, but One Piece is growing, and I think that it has the potential to continue growing, especially with moves like these. Part of the reason why I think the card game has so much potential is because, yeah, the art is amazing and because it's really fun to play. But on top of that, it is part of the One Piece property. Every year, more and more people get into the show, which in turn creates a snowball effect. As more people watch the show, more people get caught up to the show, more people have the opportunity to watch future episodes and to experience the end of this incredible anime. I believe that One Piece now is like Pokemon was 20 years ago.
Pokemon the movie joins Pokemon the video game and Pokemon the trading card as must-sees and must-haves.
While we were kids at the time, enjoying our favorite show and enjoying our favorite cards, One Piece is happening live, and it has a much wider potential audience made up of a lot of adults. There is no real limit to the amount of people that can enjoy and appreciate One Piece, meaning that its potential is massive, with the conclusion of the show still to come, and the quality still so good that it's continuing to capture new audiences every single year. I see it as a snowball of a property for whom the sky is the absolute limit. The show is huge, the game is fun to play, the art is amazing, so why hasn't the card game grown even more than it already has? I'm not saying it's not already big, because we already know that it is, but what's standing in its way of getting even bigger? Well, up until this point, the One Piece card game has had a massive visibility problem. You and I may already know and love this card game, but a lot of people out there, even people who love the show, had no clue it even existed. Why is that? Well, because A, the marketing hasn't exactly been pervasive. B, tournaments are not on a large enough scale to drive publicity in and of themselves. C, the streaming community is not big enough to draw attention to itself on its own. I mean, when you think about it, physical card games are not really enticing to watch, and while we have the sim, it's not as fun as watching someone play a card game that was designed for digital. Finally, organic word-of-mouth discoverability has been a major issue. The way that I originally found out about the One Piece card game was from being in Japan. I was in Japan when the game was in its early stages. It had already launched in the US, but I didn't even know it existed. I was already into One Piece, but because the card game was popular in Japan, because I was seeing it on store shelves, I learned that it existed. It looked like a lot of fun. I saw people playing it, and it got me interested in this game that belonged to a property I already knew and loved. But when I got back to the States, I couldn't find it on store shelves. One day I happened to go to my local Target and they had starter decks 8 and 9, which may be some of the worst starter decks ever printed, which is the reason why they were still on the shelves, and I bought them and the rest is history, but those were by far the easiest products that I was able to find. Since then, I have been hard pressed to find any One Piece cards at any retail location, and heck, it's even been hard to find some of them at local game stores. Imagine if you could go into a Target or a Walmart and see shelves lined with One Piece cards. For one, you would actually understand that it exists, and maybe you would buy a pack or two for yourself, and it would drill into your brain how amazing these cards can actually be. For people who love One Piece, I don't see this being far off from reality. With the One Piece x Dodgers collab, this totally changed. I've been a content creator in the One Piece card game space for more than a year now, and I combined my channel Instagram with my own personal Instagram, so a lot of people who are following my personal Instagram are now following my card game Instagram, and none of them really like my posts when they have anything to do with the One Piece card game. But when I posted pictures of myself holding this Luffy card, so many people were liking the photo who had never liked anything having to do with the card game itself before. When you collaborate with a franchise as storied as the Dodgers, when you have a card that is so clearly in demand as the Dodger Luffy, when you create demand from multiple audiences like the sports memorabilia collectors and the Pokemon card collectors and all of the people who are hyped about rare and interesting finds, when people see that these cards are going for $300, $500 on the internet, it provides a sense of legitimacy to a game that was previously mostly out of sight. I know Moist Critical got into One Piece about a year ago. A lot of really big influencers know that it exists, but I saw Ludwig on the Jumbotron, I saw Sea-Dog VA on the Jumbotron, I saw Tarek on the Jumbotron, and I'm just thinking, they all got this card. They all know the One Piece card game exists. They have this rare piece of memorabilia that they might talk about on their own videos and their own streams, and that is massive for this game. They may never play the game in their lives, but they have a One Piece card that they will treasure and value, and that is a huge deal. People now know about the One Piece card game. A lot of Dodger fans now know about it. A lot of One Piece fans now know about it. A lot of collectors now know about it. And when you create a foothold like that in a scene that is that large, you give the game a face that it never had before and a level of visibility that could change things forever. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe. And if you're buying anything off Dueling Guard, use my code RealJoshua for 5% off at checkout. Let me know what you think in the comments. Did you manage to get one of these cards? How do you feel about the card? Is it overhyped? Do you think it'll change the game, or am I over exaggerating? Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.